My name is Isabel Torres, and for the last 7 years of my marriage, I played the role of the submissive, slightly naive, and financially dependent wife of Damian West. We lived in a beautiful, sprawling home in one of Atlanta's most sought-after suburbs, a house Damian constantly reminded me he paid for, often referring to it as my investment that keeps you sheltered. Every mahogany surface, every imported Italian tile, served as a silent monument to his perceived generosity and my supposed debt. Damian, 42, was a regional sales manager, a good, solid job that earned him a comfortable 6-figure income and a sense of colossal self-importance. He was obsessed with control, believing his salary was the only thing preventing me from being bankrupt and incompetent. He mandated a strict budget for my allowance and scrutinized every minor expense, demanding receipts for a latte as if I were a teenager. I was 38, and I let him believe it, playing the part of the compliant, if somewhat dim-witted, spouse perfectly. The reality was a meticulously constructed piece of theater. I am Isabel Torres, CEO of Meridian Global Risk, an international consulting firm specializing in deep-cover corporate security, counter-surveillance, and high-level crisis management. We consult for governments and major multinational corporations, handling issues that are literally matters of national interest and billions in asset protection. My actual net worth is estimated to be in the high 8 figures, anchored by a series of successful venture investments and the sheer value of my firm's proprietary technology. My annual income alone makes Damian's salary look like grocery money for a week. I maintain the facade because early in our marriage, I realized Damian's need for control was not just a personality quirk, it was toxic and pathological, revealing my true professional identity. The demanding hours, the necessity of absolute confidentiality, the power I wielded, and, most critically, the massive income, would have given him a different, more dangerous kind of control. Manipulation through jealousy, public resentment, and financial abuse disguised as managing the family fortune and saving me from myself. So I told him I had a dull, administrative job at a security office downtown, earning a modest salary that barely covered my personal spending. The lie allowed me to operate freely while gathering the ironclad evidence I needed for a swift, comprehensive, and legally unassailable divorce. I had been planning my exit for over a year, working closely with my private legal team, led by a shark in Atlanta family law, Ms. Alistair. I kept meticulous records of every controlling text, every humiliating comment, and every instance of financial withholding. My primary security asset, Xavier Cole, 35, a massive, impeccably trained former special operations operative with a stoic demeanor, was introduced to Damian as my personal driver and administrative assistant for my busy, boring office job. Damian loved Xavier. He enjoyed having a uniformed, silent presence around, thinking it added to his importance. He constantly condescended to Xavier, calling him the muscle, and giving him ridiculous, menial tasks, such as fetching his dry cleaning or polishing his golf clubs, unaware that Xavier's hourly rate could buy Damian's annual vacation, or that he possessed security clearances higher than most government officials. Tonight was supposed to be a simple corporate charity dinner at a prominent downtown hotel, an event where Damian always demanded I look flawless but remain silent. The conflict began in the car, a slow, simmering resentment over his casual arrogance. I had politely corrected a factual error Damian made about a complex piece of legislation related to my actual industry, a technicality about cyber liability that I had personally briefed the Senate committee on last month. "You know, Isabel," Damian said, his voice dripping with venomous amusement, the familiar script of gaslighting beginning to play. "Sometimes you forget yourself. Stick to what you know. You'd be completely lost without my steady hand on the finances. If I let you manage our portfolio, or God forbid, actually run something serious, we'd be eating ramen by Christmas, and you'd be selling those silly little dresses." He punctuated the insult with a dismissive wave of his hand. I was done. I was utterly, exhaustedly done with the pretense. "That's not fair, Damian. I handle my own finances perfectly well," I replied, the truth slipping out with too much force, the sound of my conviction startling even myself. That flash of rebellion was all it took. He slammed on the brakes outside the upscale shopping center, the screech of the tires silencing the jazz on the radio. The rain, which had been a light drizzle, intensified instantly into a downpour, drumming loudly and furiously on the roof. "Get out," he commanded, his voice low and dangerous, his eyes flat and cold. "What are you doing?" I asked, my heart pounding, realizing the public nature of the threat. "I said get out," he repeated, reaching across and unlocking my door with a forceful click. "You need to learn a lesson about obeying me and showing respect. You want to pretend you're an independent woman? Fine. Get out. Walk home. It's only 5 miles. Call an Uber, if you can afford it, or call one of your little girlfriends to pick you up. I'll be at the dinner. Don't expect me to answer when you finally beg me to come back, soaked and sorry." He shoved me lightly toward the door, enough to make the statement public. The moment he drove away, tires splashing a huge wave of water onto the sidewalk, the shock of the calculated, public cruelty hit me. I stood on the sidewalk curb, the relentless rain instantly saturating the thin silk of my dress, the expensive fabric turning translucent and clinging to my skin. My hair, styled elaborately for the dinner, instantly flattened and clung to my face. Humiliation was a bitter, stinging taste, made worse by the knowledge that several people were watching from the shelter of the awning, including a few couples in cocktail attire who were clearly judging the messy domestic scene. But as the initial sting faded, as the cold, shocking water hit my face, the feeling was replaced by a surge of pure, icy calm. This wasn't just another argument. This was it. This was the moment of irredeemable emotional cruelty I needed. He had abandoned me, publicly and intentionally, in a vulnerable position, which in my world, qualified as intentional exposure to risk. His pathological arrogance had finally provided the ironclad, legally indisputable key piece of evidence I needed to proceed with Phase Delta 1. My teeth were chattering uncontrollably from the cold, but my hands were steady. I reached into the hidden compartment sewn into the lining of my dress, a security measure I always take when I'm without my purse, a tiny, undetectable pocket, and retrieved the small, encrypted satellite phone. I didn't dial Xavier's public, benign number. I dialed a dedicated, secure frequency that went straight to his off-site comms terminal. "Xavier," I said, my voice barely a whisper against the thunderous rain. "Ma'am, report," his voice replied instantly, professional and focused. He was monitoring me from the surveillance hub I had installed in the house, a hub Damien thought was just smart home security. "Damien has abandoned me at the Phipps Plaza entrance. Intentional exposure to risk and humiliation. I am soaking wet, without means of communication. Execute Phase Delta 1. Silence stretched for a tense beat, filled only by the static of the rain. Then Xavier's voice returned, devoid of emotion, yet carrying a terrifying, pre-planned finality. "Copy, ma'am. Phase Delta 1 initiated. Legal has been notified. ETA 5 minutes. I am en route with the extraction vehicle." Phase Delta 1 was the codename for the instantaneous, no-holds-barred initiation of the divorce proceedings, accompanied by a strategic, comprehensive financial lockdown. It meant the court order was already digitally signed and being processed. I knew the plan was already in motion. Xavier's first call wouldn't be to a driver. It would be to my primary attorney, who would instantly file the divorce papers with the court and simultaneously execute a pre-signed, court-approved injunction to freeze all joint and unverified individual assets, including every single account Damien thought was purely his own, many of which had been subtly funded by my massive cash flow over the years. I stood there, soaked and shivering, watching the high-end cars pull up to the valet, feeling the cold seep into my bones. But the cold was grounding. Exactly 5 minutes later, the air itself seemed to shift. There was a sudden, respectful parting of the traffic at the entrance, a hush falling over the valet staff. It wasn't a taxi or a civilian car. It was a massive, matte black, armored Chevrolet Suburban, with heavily tinted, bulletproof glass, the kind of vehicle used by diplomatic convoys and heads of state, rolling silently to a stop right where Damien had left me. This was the real company vehicle, reserved for high-risk extractions, and it screamed security, power, and serious money in a way Damien's sedan never could. The back door opened, and out stepped Xavier Cole. He was in his full operational gear, not a flimsy driver's suit, but a perfectly tailored dark three-piece suit made of tough, proprietary material that hid the ballistic armor underneath. His size gave him the presence of a mountain. He wasn't looking at me. He was performing a quick, clinical 360-degree security sweep, his eyes hard and focused, his hand subtly resting near his concealed weapon. The onlookers, the valets, the couples heading to dinner, stopped talking completely. They understood the arrival of this vehicle, and this man meant something intensely serious was happening. This was not a rescue. It was a military operation. Xavier walked toward me, pulling a large, black, military-grade umbrella from the car. He didn't rush. He opened it, stepped into the pouring rain, and held it over my head with the practiced grace of a man who deals with genuine threats, not just petty domestic disputes. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low rumble, the kind that demands obedience. "We are clear to proceed. Security perimeter is nominal." Just as I took my first dry step under the umbrella, Damien's imported car screeched back into the parking area, nearly hitting the valet stand. He had realized he left his phone, his life support, his link to his career and his self-esteem, in the cup holder. He got out of his sedan, completely oblivious to the massive black Suburban and the change in atmosphere, ready to retrieve his phone and continue his triumphant evening. He spotted me standing under the massive black umbrella next to the armored vehicle, with Xavier towering over me, his face contorted with confusion and rage. He ran toward me. "Isabel, what the hell is this? Who is this man? You called a tow truck? What is wrong with you standing here with this brute? Get in the car right now." Xavier, without moving his feet, shifted his body slightly, placing himself squarely and impossibly between Damien and me. Damien stumbled to a halt, intimidated by Xavier's sheer size and unnervingly calm, lethal demeanor. Damien pushed his luck, his voice rising to a frantic pitch. "Move aside, driver. I'm her husband." I said move. Xavier didn't move an inch. Instead, he reached up to his ear, where a small, clear communications earpiece was visible, and pressed a button on his lapel, activating a throat microphone that broadcast his voice clearly and crisply over the still silent, shocked crowd. He didn't speak to Damien. He spoke to the world, announcing his status and my true identity. "My name is Xavier Cole. I am the Chief of Security for Ms. Isabel Torres, CEO of Meridian Global Risk." He paused for a drawn-out, agonizing second, letting the title, CEO, not administrative assistant, and the name of a globally recognized, multi-million-dollar firm land like a physical blow against Damien's ego. "Your assets are currently under protective injunction, filed at 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time, on the grounds of emotional cruelty and financial misrepresentation. The divorce papers are being served by an authorized agent at your place of employment, the West Coast Regional Office, at this very moment." The announcement was cold, clinical, and devastatingly public. Damien's jaw dropped, his eyes wide and vacant. The few people gathered outside the entrance gasped, turning their shock onto Damien. They heard CEO, Chief of Security, injunction, and divorce papers. They suddenly understood that the man yelling in the rain was not a powerful executive, but an abusive husband being summarily executed by the legal and security forces of his now revealed, massively wealthy wife. Damien staggered backward, the rain washing away the last vestiges of his smugness. "Meridian? You lied to me. You can't do this. That's my money. That's my house." "It was never your money, Damien," I said softly, stepping out from behind Xavier's formidable shadow. The silk dress was glued to me, but the chill was gone, replaced by a triumphant, burning heat that dried my skin from the inside out. "I bought the house outright 6 years ago, 2 months after we were married, through a blind corporate LLC, so you couldn't touch it. Your name is only on the mortgage to keep your ego intact. Everything you thought you owned, the cars, the investments, the life you controlled, was mine, earned by the woman you thought was too stupid to manage a portfolio." I looked at the miserable figure of my husband, standing helpless and shivering in the pouring rain, his whole world collapsing on the sidewalk of a high-end shopping center, witnessed by his social peers. The irony was sweet and absolute. "Your lesson is complete, Damien," I concluded, my voice steady. "You taught me that my security is paramount, and my secrecy was justified. You taught me that you are not fit to be my husband, or even to know my true name. The only thing you'll be calling Uber for is a ride to a very small, cheap apartment. Xavier opened the car door with a silent, professional movement. I stepped into the warm, dry, secure cabin of the armored vehicle, feeling the plush leather and the immediate absence of the world's chaos. Xavier performed one final, chillingly effective security sweep, got into the driver's seat, and the Suburban drove away, leaving Damien West standing alone, soaked, defeated, and financially ruined. His forgotten phone, the single reason he returned, clutched in his hand, now completely useless to his dismantled life. Later that night, dry and wrapped in a thick cashmere robe in a secure, luxury apartment I had owned for years but never used, I took a call from my lead attorney. "It's done, Isabel." He was served in front of his entire sales team during their quarterly meeting. Total collapse. The injunction holds, and his credit is frozen. He has nothing. You are free. The sound of the rain outside my window no longer sounded threatening. It sounded like cleansing, a final, necessary deluge that washed away 7 years of lies and oppression. The bodyguard's arrival was not just a rescue. It was the precise, powerful strike that ended my war.